I am Juan Pablo Urcad, professor in the Department of Computer Science at the University of Iowa and principal investigator for the StoryCarnival project. In this video, I will tell you about how to run a StoryCarnival session with children. This is something that can be done at a preschool, in a daycare center, or even in a home. So first things first, so how many children would participate in a StoryCarnival session? You need 1 to 6 children. That would be ideal. We have worked with more kids. It gets a little bit challenging. And ideal numbers are, I would say, 3 to 5 children. And you do need an adult facilitator to run the activity. So if you're in a preschool, for example, it might be a situation where if there's a teacher and an aide, it might be an activity that the aide could run or the teacher could run while the aide watches the other kids. And it is something that will require some space dedicated to the activity, some physical space. So if you're in a preschool, this could be one of the stations that you have in a classroom, or it could be something that you do in a separate room, for example. And it could be done on the floor. So we've done it in one school that has carpeted space. Kids typically play on the floor, and they did it on the floor in that case. In another school where they tended to do more activities on tables, we ran it on tables, and that worked fine too. The dynamics were a little bit different, but the basics of the kind of activities that we want to support happen well in both cases. So you want some space that you clear out, either on a table or on the floor. And then what you want to look for in terms of materials is first props. What do we mean by props? We mean objects that children can use to represent other objects in the story, and that don't look like anything in particular. And that's the part that's important, because we want to get children to practice symbolic play. So I can show you some of the things that we have used. So we use a lot of foam blocks, so like these that you might have if you have a preschool or even at home. We also got some hats, some play hats for kids. And these are good because sometimes they do like to wear them as a hat, but they can also use them as a bowl or something to carry items. So that's useful. We also got at some point some foam sheets, and this can be, we found this useful too. But essentially what you want to do is not go out and buy anything new. Just look at the materials that you already have that don't look like other things. So other things you could use would be boxes, or just anything you might have available that might be useful for representing a variety of items symbolically and doesn't look like anything in particular. So we want kids to practice that symbolic play. And it's something that at this age, it's something that they should be able to do, and that it's important to practice. So after you have your space ready and your materials ready, I would say keep the materials away for the first part of the activity. Otherwise, kids will get distracted by having them readily available. So the first thing you want to do is the equivalent of story time. So typically, you have kids sitting around a teacher or an adult, and they read a book. And you want to do the same thing with StoryCarnival. So in this case, you have a couple of options. So we have some pre-made stories that you can use off of our website. And we also have stories that are Mad Lib style. So they're essentially story templates, and you can pick what elements will show up in the story. And the ones that are pre-made, you can also print a version of the story. So if you want to do it only with paper, that works well. Otherwise, we would recommend using a tablet to do the stories. So welcome to the StoryCarnival website. First, I'll do a quick walkthrough of what the portions of the website are. At the top, you're going to have our pre-made stories. And These you can either read them straight on whatever device you're using, which could be a regular computer, it could be a smartphone or a tablet. For us, tablets have worked better for doing stories with kids. Or if you prefer to not do any screen at all, you can print them out too. So this will generate a PDF file, and then you can just print it out. It might be good to laminate them for having them last a little bit longer, but you can do that. Um, Following this is a section where you can make your own stories. We'll go over those later. These are the Mad Libs type stories where you select a template and then you pick which elements you want in the story, and it will make a story for you using those elements. And then there's a voice agent control that you can use if you are in a situation where the kids that you're working with have already seen all the stories, they know them well, they don't need to see them again, and then you can go straight to playing. And if you still feel like you need to use a voice agent, you can, or maybe you just want to use it for another reason. You can use the voice agent controller through this link. We're not going to go through that in this video because we have a separate video dedicated only to the voice agent. So I will show you the pre-made stories first. So we recommend that you start out with this first one on the top left, which is an introduction to how to play with StoryCarnival. And what will happen with any of the stories is you click Read Story, it's going to load up the story. And then these stories essentially they come with audio generated by a speech synthesizer. So if you want, all you have to do is just press on the arrow buttons to go from page to page, and then it works like an electronic book. So let's look at the first page.
Hi, my name is Minnie Bird and I want to tell you a story about how my friends cat, monkey, bear, and horse like to play pretend.
Right, so you can see how a particular page runs. One thing that we recommend as you go from page to page, if it makes sense, is to ask questions about the things that are happening in the story. It doesn't apply to this first page, but we recommend to ask questions such as, what do you think this character is thinking? Or why do you think the characters did something? Or what do you think will happen next? And these stories are very useful for children to help them pay a little bit more attention to the story, but also to better comprehend it. So the story is going to work better if you do that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to skip to the end of the story to show you the pattern that we see in the stories. So in this one presents how to do make-believe play. And then at the very end, the characters
I
introduce
am a healer.
themselves, or
I can take care of anyone who is hurt or sick.
they remind the kids of what their role is in the story. After the story is done, we're going to move on to the play planner automatically, and we're going to see how many players there are. Let's say there's 2 kids playing. And then at this point, what you can do, so when you do the story, you want to have kids set up in a kind of like a story time setup where they're all looking at the story together. When you're doing the play planning, you're going to be saying how many players there are, and then you can pass a tablet or show the screen to a one child at a time, and they can select which character they want to be. And then they'll get a reminder of what the
I
character
am the
does,
chef. I can gather and prepare any food we need.
right? And then you can, if they don't like that character or they can change, or you can select it, right? And then it will go on to the second character. So we could do cat.
I am the finder. I can find anything the group needs.
And then it will take us to the user interface for the managing the voice agent. If you want to use it, it's optional. And this is when kids would start playing, actually, right? So this is when they would start playing with nothing, no screens, and this is the part that takes the most amount of time during play. So typically, the experiencing a story takes, in selecting which characters to play, takes about 5 minutes. And then the part where kids play, I would say any time for anywhere from 15 to minutes to half an hour. Sometimes it could go on longer, but it depends on how much time you have too. I'm going to quickly show you next how the make your own stories work. So what you're going to do here is you're going to select a template for a story. So for example, this explore a new place is one of the templates. And then you can say next, and then you select the setting. So we have ocean and space and the woods and a house. So let's say we do space, and then you pick 4 characters. And I can pick 4 of those and then pick a vehicle. So maybe here's where you can be creative, right? And with this, you can select them as an adult, all these elements, or you can ask the kids to take turns selecting one item at a time. And then they can have fun seeing what they selected be reflected. And this is where you can kind of be consistent. So we selected space, so then a rocket might make sense, but you can also make it kind of a funny or strange story by selecting a boat, right? So maybe I'll select the boat, and then something happens. So we could say there's a storm, and then a method, I don't know, they see something, a kind of food might be an apple, and then he makes a story with those elements, and then
our story begins with
so
4
see,
friends exploring
they're
space.
they're
with
riding
their
a
boat.
ship in space.
Now
There's a
that
storm.
I was
They get stuck
perfect.
in the
By Dylan,
moon,
Cat, Bear.
and then
The friends went.
I am
they
the
get an
fun.
apple.
I
So you can see all the elements there. If the kids like the story, you want to keep it for later, you can give it a name and save it. Otherwise, you can skip. And then again, it moves on to the play planner. So it kind of works like the other stories. The only thing with this one is right now we don't have the ability to print them out. You could always do screen captures and then print it out that way, but it's a little bit more work. All right, so those are the basics of how to run stories in StoryCarnival. So after children have experienced a story and have planned who they're going to play during playtime, then they can start playing with props, with each other, and with the support of the adult being involved. So in terms of adult involvement here, what are the things that you want to be promoting? First is trying to keep all the kids within the general context of the story, if at all possible. So we want to keep kids in character. So if they chose a particular role, to stay within that role. It's okay if they want to change roles. That's fine. But then trying to stay within whatever role they're currently playing. It's also important to try to stay within the general context of the story. Obviously, we want to encourage creativity, so they will go off in directions not presented in the story, but it has to be kind of within the general idea of the story. We want to promote symbolic play, so that may require some modeling from adults. So for example, you can get a block and say, hey, look, this could be a sandwich, and maybe later we can use it as a phone, for example. So just, a little bit of modeling. Kids tend to pick that up pretty quickly. One thing we want to do is make sure that kids are not being left behind. So I think paying extra attention to children who might be a little more shy or kind of stay away a little bit or may not be participating as much, and trying to integrate them and have them play too. That's important. And that's one of the reasons why we use our voice agent, which will be the subject of the next video. But even without the voice agent, which is not necessary for doing a StoryCarnival activity, you can encourage integration, both encouraging kids to join in, but also encouraging other kids to welcome and to invite other children to join in to play. One of the harder parts of StoryCarnival play is getting kids to play together. So typically what you might first see is that kids individually play within the story and within a role, but they don't really do much coordination with each other or planning ahead with each other. So that's the one thing that we want to work on over time, is helping kids do that. And then we have the voice agent, and we have used the voice agent mainly as a way of communicating with children in a way that's different from just communication coming from an adult. And kids do tend to respond to the agent in different ways from adults, so we can use it to encourage kids to work together, to suggest new directions in a story, or to give praise, right? I'm controlling it from my phone right now, and I can make it say things.
That's incredible.
So it said, "That's incredible." It could encourage some collaboration.
Let's help each other.
Right, so it's pretty easy to use. So in this case, I'm just using suggestions that are ready to go, and we'll go over those in the next video about StoryCarnival's voice agent.